Hi, everyone. My name is Al D, and I am the founder of MBA School and the author of MBA Insider, How to Make the Most of Your MBA Experience. And I'm excited today to talk about a topic that I'm really passionate about, which is navigating the MBA internship recruiting process. And before I get too deep into this topic, just to give a background, I am the founder of MBA School, which is a blog that is dedicated to showcasing prospective and current MBA students what the MBA experience is like, what students actually do in business school to build their careers, and tips and best practices for navigating business school. I invite you to check out mbaschool.com or find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. And in addition to running MBA School, I'm actually the author of MBA Insider, which is a book about how to make the most of your MBA experience. And this is a great guide to any prospective or current MBA student to really understand the key aspects and elements of MBA programs, as well as to get guidance on how to make the most of your MBA education to further your own career growth. I invite you to check this book out on Amazon. You can see it through the bit.ly link here, or go to Amazon and type in MBA Insider. But let's get talking about internships. And internships in general are really exciting. I mean, after all, most people go to business school because they want to further accelerate their career or try a new one, which is what exactly an internship is all about. And internships and internship recruiting is exciting for a number of reasons. First off, it's a chance where you're really getting to know the companies and the culture of those specific companies you're interviewing with. This is, your chance to really have that two-way street, and not only to get interviewed, but also to interview those companies to truly understand what the culture is like. A second reason it's exciting is it's an opportunity to kind of put your learning into use. Now, you've been through this first semester, these first 2 quarters. You've learned new frameworks, new ideas, new subjects, and now it's time to put that to use. And hopefully those things are interesting to you because they're going to be what you could be doing for the summer. So it's a great chance to kind of put that learning to use. And last but not least, it's a great opportunity in terms of networking as well as building relationships. When you're interviewing, you're getting a chance to meet these people who could be your fellow colleagues or, for the next couple of years if all goes well. And being able to kind of engage with them, get to know them, learn a bit more about them is pretty interesting as well as exciting throughout the process. But it's also very challenging, right? It's overwhelming. Let's just put it that way. When you're interviewing, you're probably doing multiple different types of interviews at once with varying companies, and that can be hard to keep track of. For example, if you're just starting an interview with company A, but you're in the second round with company B, or in some cases, for some of you, if you're interviewing for one specific type of role over here, and then you're interviewing for another type of role over there, and they're different, preparing for those two can be challenging. There's going to be highs and lows. It really can be a roller coaster full of emotions at times. There's going to be moments when you're really excited because you move on to the next round of a company you really want. And then there's going to be times when you do an interview and literally within an hour, you get a rejection email. Those never feel good. And sometimes those swings of emotions can be difficult. And this one, and something I know I felt at times, it's easy to feel insecure. When everyone in your class is interviewing at the same time, it can sometimes seem like everyone is doing well and you're the only one who is not doing well. And that can be pretty debilitating at times. So what I want to do is to give you some tips for how you can successfully navigate the process and achieve, your kind of career and internship goals. So with that, let's get into some tips for navigating the MBA internship recruiting process. Okay. First and foremost, the very first thing I want you to do is to focus on process and not outcomes. What does this mean? Why should you focus on process and not outcomes? I mean, after all, an outcome is that you want an internship, right? And that's true. We all want an internship. But I think the best approach is really to focus on developing a process and then making sure you execute against that process as opposed to focusing solely on the outcome. When you focus solely on the outcome, you might think you did poorly in an interview, in an interview that you didn't move on for, but you might be missing some of the positive aspects that you put forth in an interview, and you might not take that positive feedback into the next interview that you did. For example, Let's say that you absolutely nailed an interview and you did really well and you followed a really good process. But let's say three other candidates were also interviewing who also did the same, and you ended up not moving on. If you solely focused on the outcome, you'd be missing the fact that you still did really well. It just was a little bit out of your control. So instead of just focusing on the outcome, why don't you also consider focusing on the process? And did you put forth a good process? So, for example, for this interview, did you prepare? Did you come with good questions? Were your answers succinct and to the point? Did you follow up afterwards? I think these are much more important questions to ask yourself and much more holistic questions to ask than to solely focus on, did you get the interview or not? So number one, make sure you focused on the process and not just the outcome. Number two, debrief every interview. So this is really important because this is what helps you learn. After you finish an interview, I know it can be pretty exhausting or pretty draining, but take the time to write down what you did well, what you think you can improve upon on, and make sure you bake that into what you do for your next interview, right? This is really important to kind of help you learn. And the nice thing about interviews is that they often serve as really good feedback loops. You get a better sense of what works or what doesn't work, or you get a chance to kind of put yourself out there and to see how it goes. I think this is really important because if you don't take the time to kind of reflect upon what you did in that interview, you won't know what to do kind of for the next one. So this is really important just to make sure that you're learning from what you're doing. Okay. And so while self-reflection and analysis is important, I think it's also important to not make too much of any one's interview, no matter how poor or how well that it went. The last thing that you want to do heading into your next interview is to have the ghost of the previous one sitting in your head. And so to manage this, what I would urge you to do, and what I know some other people do really well, is put a time box on the debrief of any given interview. Maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 2 hours, maybe it's 4 hours, where after you get kind of that feedback, you let yourself kind of feel out all your emotions, all the good ones, all the bad ones, all the feels. And after that allotted time period is over, kind of pick yourself up and then move on to the next one. You can't let yourself wallow too much, particularly in some of the more challenging ones that you go through. Okay, tip 4, make it a group effort. So during the interview process, I think it can be easy to want to kind of hole up on your own and remove yourself from the rest of your peers or from your classmates. Maybe this helps you focus, or maybe it's just what you think is best for you because this is a singular process. And also, maybe you want to do this because you're afraid of sharing your successes or failures too publicly. So what I'm going to offer instead is to lean into collaborating with your peers and your classmates. And the reason why is so much can be learned from others who are going through the process with you, right? And it really can be one of those things where misery does love company. I say that jokingly, but I have a lot of friends who, and I know a lot of MBA students, particularly those who are in consulting or banking, which tend to be very intensive processes where the people really go in it together and they're there for each other. And yes, it's your specific interview where you have to perform, but your peers who are also doing the same thing can often be collaborators with you, can help you kind of debrief what you did, can help you understand how you can improve. And furthermore, in the moments when you're down and you're struggling, these are the people who can be the part of your support group who can kind of give you the confidence you need to keep pushing. And at some point, you surely can, be that support mechanism for your classmates. And then last but not least, when you make it a group effort, when you do have that breakthrough, having some other people to celebrate with is really a nice feeling. And number 5, don't take no as permanent. You don't need to close doors because you never know when you're going to want to reopen it or when the door will reopen itself. There are very few hard no's in the interview process. If you're truly still interested in a company, or if you have a good connection with a recruiter or an interviewer, but you don't get the offer, keep the door open. You might end up recruiting for them for full-time jobs, or you may end up there later in the career. Or in some cases, you may end up there later for another internship. So when there is a no. Number one, it's okay to be disappointed, but don't be disappointed for too long. But number two, pick yourself up, write those thank you emails, and kind of move forward. But know that it may not be no forever. And those thank you emails sometimes can be tedious or unnecessary, but sometimes the little things make a big difference, and you never know when it's going to come and help you. So, really quickly, a story. When I was in business school, when I was interviewing for internships, the very first company that was really someone company that I was excited about was a software company in San Francisco. So I interviewed with them, and it was one of my top choices. And while the interview went really well, the company decided to go with another candidate who they were a little bit farther along within the process. So I sent them a thank you note to the recruiter, and she agreed to stay in touch. A week later, at the end of February, I was fortunate where I had three offers, and I ultimately selected one of those offers with which was a brand management internship. And I was at that point ready to coast for the rest of the semester. Long story short, at the end of April, I got my offer rescinded from that company. And with 2 weeks left in the semester, I now didn't have a summer internship. I was shocked and scared, and admittedly, so was the career center staff at my career center. But with my back against the wall, I kind of went back to the drawing board. I wasn't ready to give up, so I resumed my internship interviewing process, again, following the process. And it was a process that had already worked fairly well for me, and I got to work. I went on job boards and company websites. I reached back out to alums I'd built relationships with, and I relied on that process that initially served me well. And soon enough, I started getting some bites. I started getting some interviews. And sure enough, later on, I saw a posting for that same company that I previously interviewed at that was at the top of my list, but who I had lost out to another candidate. And so when I saw the posting, I actually reached back out to that recruiter who quickly put me in touch with the team for a first round interview. The first round interview went really well, and I moved to the second round. But simultaneously, I finally broke through and I got an offer with another tech company that was based in the Bay Area. And I really wanted to evaluate the two against each other equally, but that company gave me a 24-hour window for an exploding offer, and I had to make a decision. Because I had been through such a roller coaster, I couldn't give up the sure thing. And so I told that recruiter, while I'd love to kind of do this final round interview, I think I'm going to take the offer that I already have in hand. And she understood and told me to stay in touch because, again, you never know what's going to happen. And so I hung up the phone, and just in that, kind of moment, I said, you know what, I'm going to go kind of de-stress and go work out. So I went to go for a workout before kind of making the call to accept my offer. And I did my workout and I came back. And right as I came back into my apartment, I got a call from that recruiter. And she called me back and she said, well, if you accept this offer right now and come work for us this summer, I'll waive your final round interview and make you that offer. In that instant, I accepted the offer and turned down the exploding offer and ended up with an internship at the company that was probably my first choice. So, why do I tell this story? Because this story kind of illustrates kind of like all the points that I'm just making here and all the tips that I've given you in terms of focusing on the process and not the outcomes, making sure that I debriefed after all my interviews, time boxing and then moving on, even when I was in a particularly hairy moment in terms of getting an internship offer rescinded, relying on my peers as well as the Career Management Center. And then certainly last but not least, not taking no as permanent. That initial door that closed maybe a little bit when I didn't get the interview the first time ended up something that I came back to in the end. So, the point of this is that there's going to be highs and lows, but when you have a good process and are focused on your goals, I do think things have a way of working out. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be easy or straightforward. And certainly in my case, having a little luck go your way certainly helps. But when you're patient and persistent, things have a way of working out. And to keep the record straight, that company that I interned at is actually the company that I'm at today. So I certainly would not be here if I hadn't gone through that whole process. So again, if you enjoyed these tips and are interested in learning more about what MBA students do in their internships or what they learn in business school, I invite you to check out MBA Insider. It's got a lot of great insights in it, whether it's hearing from detailed explanations and insights of the key elements of the MBA experience, or getting strategies as well as tactics and examples for how to navigate, the MBA internship process or recruiting in general in business school. And certainly the real world lessons from the 60 students that I interviewed for the book are also a key highlight of the book. So if you're interested in this, definitely check it out on Amazon today. And if you're looking for any additional resources that can be helpful, I invite you to check out MBA Schooled, my blog, as well as to check out additional webinars that I have hosted on YouTube. There's a great one on how to maximize your MBA experience. And then certainly I have other thought leadership that's out there on various different forms. But thank you for listening today, and I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.